r/entitled parents. Karen demands I play a more appropriate game so her son can watch, threatens to have her husband arrest me when I resist. By u/StarSpangldBastard. Sam L. Jackson voice. I have had it with these motherfucking Karens on this motherfucking plane. Here's some background info. I go to university in Florida but my family lives in New Jersey and I fly back and forth between the two a lot, so it was only inevitable that I run into an M on a plane at some point. One more quick bit about me before we actually get into the story. I'm 21 years old, but when I'm clean shaven, which is really rare, I look significantly younger, and it just so happens that I felt like shaving a few hours before my flight. This sounds like an obscure detail but trust me, it comes into play later when Karen mistakes me for a teenager. Cast: me, obviously. Karen, obviously. FA, flight attendant. RP, random passenger on the other side of the aisle. AD, army dude. This happened in the first week of May when my spring semester ended. I never pay the extra money to choose my own seat, so this always results in me getting one assigned to me. I was flying with Spirit. I usually fly with them or Frontier and this is how seating works for them, so most of the time I end up in a middle seat since all the people who choose their own seats would obviously never pick that. However, I was lucky enough to score a window seat this time. This is an extremely popular opinion but the window seat is my favorite plane seat. Enter Karen and her son. Karen looks exactly how you would expect, and her son is most likely no older than 8 years old. Neither of them made any effort to greet me or introduce themselves, which I didn't mind one bit since I didn't try to talk to them either. I was already playing The Binding of Isaac on my Nintendo Switch with earbuds plugged in, which clearly signaled that I wasn't in the mood to socialize. My flight was pretty early in the morning and I was tired as shit. Karen sat in the aisle seat and her son sat in the middle, between us. Now, for those of you who have never heard of The Binding of Isaac, it's an M-rated video game, and it does feature a decent bit of blood, but the graphics are very cartoony and mild. It shouldn't even be rated M if you ask me. Although I have had people disagree with me on this, so maybe I just have really good tolerance. But not if you ask Karen. Cause about a half hour into the flight, I feel a tap on my left shoulder. I was sitting on the right side of the plane. I took my left earbud out and turned to Karen, and that's when this conversation started. Me, yeah. What's going on? Karen, excuse me, would you mind playing a different game? Me, why? Karen, my son is watching you play and that game is creeping him out, it isn't appropriate for him. Me, it's the only game I have so there isn't really anything I can do about that. Of course this was a cold-faced lie. Ask anyone I've ever talked to, if I have one defining characteristic, it's my active and enthusiastic hobby of game collecting. But Karen didn't need to know that. I just didn't see the reason to let the way I entertain myself be dictated by an 8-year-old, especially one that I've never met and never will meet again. Karen, sure there is, you can stop playing. Me, and sit here for 2 hours staring out the window with no other way to entertain myself. If it's all the same to you, I'd rather not. At this point Karen is starting to raise her voice. Karen, well it's not the same to me. You need to learn to be aware of children around you. Now, a bit more background information about myself. I spent a lot of my time growing up around my little brother and a lot of other children in my family who were considerably younger than me, and every time I wanted to do something I enjoyed, my parents would always make me dumb it down somehow because I needed to include the other kids. So long story short, I've really grown to resent commands like this, and hearing one from a stranger caused me to grow especially hostile. Oh yeah, and I hate kids. Me, no, I don't. Your son needs to learn that the world doesn't revolve around him and not to poke his nose around where it doesn't belong. In hindsight I was a pretty big asshole, but I don't exactly have the greatest social skills in the world. Also, Karen was an asshole first and a much bigger one, as you'll see later on in the story, so I like to think I was justified. Karen, how dare you talk back to an adult that way? Me, I give my peers the same amount of respect that they give me. I've done nothing but sit here and mind my own business and I would appreciate the same courtesy. Karen, I'm not one of your stupid peers, I'm not a teenager. Me, those statements contradict each other. I'm an adult too. Karen, no you're not. Me, are you trying to argue with me over my own age? Karen, then prove it to me. Of course, my first idea was to just say no and try to drop this foolish conversation. But then I realized that she would probably keep bugging me if I did, and my best chance at ending this was proving her wrong, so I took out my driver's license. I began to reach over to hand it to her, but I was barely halfway through the motion before she impatiently snatched it from my hand. Karen, this is fake. My husband is a cop. I'm having you arrested when he picks us up at the airport. Me, well it's real, so have fun wasting both of our families' time. Now, in Karen's defense, I was named after my dad, who was named after his dad, who was named after his dad, so my name does sound like that of an old person and is very rare in my generation, so I guess it's somewhat plausible for her to think that I got a fake ID with an older person's information on it. Karen, no it's not. I bet you use this to get into bars just like everyone else your age. Me, well yes, I do use my ID to get into bars, and so do most other 21-year-olds, so that makes perfect sense to me. Karen, shut the fuck up you criminal. I'm not giving it back. Me, that's some intense language. You need to learn to be aware of children around you. Karen was clearly furious but didn't even want to entertain me with a response, so I didn't say anything else either. At this point she was quite literally stealing my ID, and I obviously had to do something about it, so I decided to wait for a flight attendant to come by so I could tell them what was going on. In the meantime I decided to continue playing The Binding of Isaac, knowing full well that this would piss Karen off, since it was the original root of the situation, and it visibly did. However, instead of saying something to me again, she decided to push the button that summons flight attendants. In hindsight, I should have done that when she stole my license, but I forgot that was an option at the time. I have my earbuds attached to the game as usual, but this time the volume is all the way down so I can eavesdrop while looking like I have no idea what's going on. Enter FA. Karen, excuse me, that kid in the window seat is disturbing my son. Please make him stop. FA looks at me skeptically. He doesn't look like he's disturbing anyone. Karen, yes he is. He's playing an inappropriate game and my son is watching. Make him stop. FA, there isn't a policy against video games as long as they're in airplane mode. If your son doesn't like the game he shouldn't be watching it. Karen is probably about to say something but now I decide to butt in. Me. Does that mean that there isn't a policy that allows someone to steal my driver's license if I'm playing a game that she deems inappropriate? FA, no. There's nothing like that. Me, well clearly she didn't get the memo. FA, turns to Karen, did you steal his driver's license? Karen, what? No. How dare you accuse me of such a thing? Are you really gonna believe a stupid kid over me? I give FA a smirk and she shoots me back an understanding smirk. At this point she realizes that she'll need to appease Karen until the time is right. FA, okay. Give me a few minutes to speak to the captain. I'll see what I can do about your situation. FA walks away and comes back to our row a few minutes later. FA, there's a seat available in first class, or whatever Spirit calls those seats. I'm usually not allowed to usher passengers there, but we can make an exception after what you've had to deal with. Karen, oh, thank God. This rotten teenager has been ruining my flight. FA, I wasn't talking to you. Looks over at me, sir, would you like to move up to first class with no extra charge? I flash a douchey grin at Karen, then look to FA and subtly shrug as I say. Me, well, if you insist, how can I say no? FA, great. And also, it would probably be in your best interest to give him back his driver's license. Karen, he's lying. Why would I want a teenager's ID? Enter RP, who stands up and starts talking to FA. RP, excuse me, I've been listening to what's been going on. This woman demanded to see his ID and then loudly announced that she wasn't giving it back. Karen, he's lying. Turns to RP, of course you would take his side, you sexist. Now shut up and mind your own goddamn business. Now two other nearby passengers stand up and start to take my and RP's side. And the best part, they are both women. Now Karen can't even play the sexism card. FA, if you stole his driver's license, please give it back before you create more problems for us and our passengers and get arrested for theft when we land in Atlantic City. Karen, you can't arrest me. My husband is a cop and he's waiting for me at the airport. FA, then can you imagine how upset he would be when the first thing he has to do when he sees you is arrest you? Now, please make everyone's lives easier and give the license back so that no other trouble has to start. Karen reluctantly gives me back my ID without even making eye contact. FA escorted me to my new seat, next to AD. While I was on the way, she told me that I could probably press charges against Karen for attempted theft and disturbing the peace with her, FA, and a handful of passengers as witnesses, but I just shrugged it off and decided it wasn't worth it. Sure, Karen is a horrible person, but I have nothing to gain from having her arrested and disturbing the lives of the witnesses to possibly have part in a court case. Anyway, I sit down next to AD. He pretty much looks exactly how you would expect. In full uniform, buzz cut, the whole 9 yards. Of course, as soon as I sit down I shake his hand, thank him for his service, all that good stuff. I also apologize that I had to disrupt his privacy because of an M. AD chuckles, nah man, don't worry about it. AD was actually very interested in hearing about what happened with me and Karen, so I told him pretty much everything I've written above and he got an absolute kick out of it. Turns out he had also been a pretty big gamer before going into the military, so we had quite a bit to talk about in the remaining hour and 45 minutes of the flight. That's pretty much the story. The rest of the flight was pretty enjoyable. Kind of an anticlimactic ending, but oh well. I still don't regret not appeasing that brat. Thank you for listening, my children. Please leave a like and subscribe and ring my bell sack to stay updated with my videos as they come out. Love you, bye.